So this is a very interesting example of what internet has caused in our society. So in the 18th century, the Oxford University Library was one of the largest in the world, and it had approximately 200 volumes, but this is what they call natural philosophy. So there was many more volumes in theology and philosophy, but natural philosophy, that is what we call science today, they had about 200 volumes. So if a professor wanted to know everything that had in the world to know about science, he could devote about 8 hours a day to read, and if he could read about 20 pages per hour, resting on Saturdays and Sunday, he could read in only 1 year all the books in the library. So in 1 year, anyone could be updated to all the information that you had available in the world. Okay? And then on the other hand, they estimated that today, in 1 week of the New York Times newspaper, you have more information than a person could see in the 18th century during his entire lifetime. So there are billions of uniquely addressable web pages indexed in Google. Okay? And we need to help make sense of all of them. Information nowadays is cheap. Information used to be very expensive, but today it's cheap. You just go to the internet and the information is there. The problem that we have today is how to make that information valuable, how to make something out of that information that is available in huge quantities. For example, this is a graph similar to the ones that you saw on Leopoldo's presentation, but it talks about information only. So we have years in this axis and information measured in billions of gigabytes in this one. So about 40,000 years ago, men had accumulated very little information. There was no writing at this time. So all the information was passed from generation to generation by speech, only speech. So a lot of information was lost with this speech. Then in 1442, what happened in 1442 that started to change this? Printing. So the press was invented, and after the press was invented, you can see that a little bit of information started to accumulate. Of course, before that, there was writing, but only the monks in the monasteries were, copying the books, so still a lot of information was lost. They couldn't keep up to the amount of information. So in the 60s, what happened in the 60s? The computer was invented. And again, we can see a raise in the amount of information that is accumulated. So in 93 is when the internet was put up to the public. So it was also invented in 64, but it was a very restricted network. And then in 93 it got commercial. And after you got the internet commercial, you can see that in 2002 we had a huge increase of information of the order of about 12 billion gigabytes. So from 2002 to 2003, in only 1 year, you doubled the information that had been produced by the whole mankind in 40,000 years. And then from 2003 to 2004, you doubled again. And that has been the rate of increase in the information accumulated since then. It doubles every year. So what happens? Of course, we cannot keep up to the information. This slide is in Portuguese, but I have a translation here. Okay? It's a quote from a very traditional Brazilian book, which is called Grande Sertão Veredas, It talks about the life in the northeast of Brazil, where it's very dry, it's almost a desert, and it's a very poor region. But one of these wise men that is an illiterate but lives in this place, he says, "Are you all insane? Because our head is only one, and the things that already exist and that are about to come are too many much, and much bigger, different. And we must need our head to increase for the total amount. But what is the problem? Our heads cannot increase. Our head is only one, and it has this size, and it has been this size for the last 5 million years. So, no, not 5 million. 100,000 years, so it's Homo sapiens, more or less. Okay? So we cannot increase our heads in the same rate that the information is increasing. And the result of that is that, okay, do not compete with the pen drive. You will lose. So what we should do, what should we use our heads for? Not to accumulate the information. Pen drive can do that much better than we can. We must use our heads to transform this information into knowledge. So we must transform data into information and information into knowledge. And in my humble opinion, that's the problem. We are not using our heads to transform data into information and information into knowledge. That's why the presentations, they can be poster presentations by students or PowerPoint presentation by professor. They are so boring. Because sometimes we show the data is not enough to transform it into information or into knowledge. So, it's superficial. And this is a huge problem, because of course there are too much information. How we can address all the information? We can't. So we keep up on the surface of the information. And that's not interesting. So what I will propose to you over the next days is that we learn how to select information, how we give value to the information, how we use our criteria to choose the information that is hugely available.